When I was growing up, I felt unwanted, unloved, and rejected. But now, God has changed my destiny. I am Caroline Chagaya, and this is my story.
Family support is essential to individuals for various reasons, most of which are related to one's personal well-being because it can benefit a person's physical, emotional, and mental health, and what it offers us human beings can't be found anywhere else. It has been said that if you think you know a perfect family, you don't know the family very well. Caroline Chagaya, born and raised in Vihaga County, is no exception.
Unfortunately, at the age of 5, my mom had to divorce my dad and they had to go their separate ways. So I had to go with my mom to her maternal home. We stayed there. Then life was okay because my grandfather was still there. He used to love me so much. Life was good, was normal. But when my grandfather died, things had to change. My mom got remarried somewhere else. Living with her stepdad, it was not easy because the man was a drunkard. He would smoke. When he comes home, he would just beat my mom, throw my mom out, even if it was raining, beat it in the dark. So life had to go on until when things became too much. When one night my mom was beaten, her clothes torn, until she was thrown out of the house. So she had to go back at her maternal home. And she never went back to that abusive marriage again. After a few years, as a woman, you also have a future of your own. So my mom had to remarry again for the 3rd time, whereby I had to follow her to her new marriage. When I went with her, life was okay at first, until when my mom gave birth for my stepdad. I now became the nanny of that child. On several occasions, I could even go hungry because the food that has been cooked is only for the young child. So there was nothing I could do about it. I had to travel to school more than 3 kilometers every single day. Sometimes you go to school on an empty stomach. So things were pretty difficult, but all in all, I kept forging on. And it came to a point when I couldn't just take it anymore because every time they kept reminding me that, Caro, this is not your place, this is not your home, this is not your father. You have to look for your father. You don't belong here. So anytime you get abused, when my stepdad could beat me up, there'll be no excuse because you yourself, you already know you don't belong to that place. It came to a point when the abuse was too much for me to bear because your stepdad beats you, makes sure all the clothes are torn, you haven't eaten, you're so weak. And when you come back from school, you still have to go look for grass for the cows, and the remaining you have to sell for 20 shillings. You go buy flour, you bring it home so that you can provide a meal for the day. Failure to do so, then there will be no meal for you. And it subjected me to so much pain because my stepdad used to make local changa. And during the night in disco mastangas, they could give me, I go and sell even cigarettes and bang. And I must make sure that I sell everything before I come back home. When I come back home from the disco matanga after selling the bang, tomorrow I have to wake up, and still go back to school. And I was still young. I was barely 12 years old, but I still had to do it because if I fail to do so, then I'll get a beating of my life. So I even one day tried, like I said, this thing that people are just smoking, why can't I try it out? So it's really difficult because in such an environment you get subjected to things that are not really meant for the kids. So for me it was difficult, but I always say it was only the strength of God that kept me moving.
Parents have a sacred duty to righteously rear their children in love and to provide for their physical and spiritual needs while teaching them how to love and serve one another. But this was not the case for Caroline.
My step-grandfather, who was now my mom's father-in-law, started to make sexual advances at me. So I went and told my mom, this is what grandfather is doing to me, and it's not right. And my mom told me, you're not supposed to talk ill of mature people. Don't ever say that to any other person. So my mom shutting me up, it really shattered me. So when that abuse continued, I became too afraid until I had to run away. Because even if I go to my mom with evidence that this is what grandfather has done to me, they just say you have to keep quiet in order to protect the honor of the family. So for me, I couldn't endure it anymore until one day I just decided to run away.
Looking for a way out of the abusive home, Caroline decided to look for her biological father, who would give her the peace she craved.
So fortunately, I knew the name of my father, so I just went and asked around for my dad. When I found him, I was welcomed home. My grandmother welcomed me. By that time, I was in class 7, and I was welcomed home. It was on a Friday. Then that week, on a weekend, my mom reported my dad to the chief and claimed that my dad had kidnapped me. So we were summoned at the chief's place. We went, and I was asked, am I going with my dad or remaining with my mom? But for me, the abuse that I had gone through since I was a little child, I was not ready to go back to it again. So I told the chief, for me, I'm going to remain with my dad. So the chief said, okay, if that's what you want, it's okay. So the stepdad requested for my dad to compensate all the years that he had stayed with me. And my dad had no problem with that. He just accepted. He gave out the cash that they needed and one cow. And I started staying at my dad's place officially. Though I could not stay with my dad in the same house because he was not married, I was staying with my grandmother and my aunt. And I got enrolled in school. I did my KCP. I passed well. I was called to my girls' high school. I was happy. But unfortunately, I didn't get that chance to go to my dream school because there was no money. I got enrolled in a local school, in a district school, in Form 1. I continued well.
This peace was short-lived as Caroline was betrayed by someone she never expected.
There was funeral at home, and the one who had died was a soldier. So he was brought home by fellow soldiers to pay the last respects. And in our Luhya culture, we always have that Isukuti night. The dance before now you can send the last respects, you can bury the dead person. So during that time there came this officer who approached us and requested, which soda are you taking? And for that time and that age, like if someone buys you a soda, like you respect that person, you see like he's a very important person. So for us, we were so happy. I was with my classmates just seated. Then everybody said, I'm going to take this soda, I'm going to take this. So the sodas were brought and they were opened. So after taking that soda, I never knew what happened next. I only came to realize, I came to my senses the following day in the morning in my brother's chambers. So I was like, what is really happening? So when I tried to wake up, I was feeling a bit dizzy, I was exhausted. And getting out of that bed, I realized I was in blood, like my clothes were stained in blood and the sheets. So I was like, hey, has my menses begun? And it's barely 2 weeks since I saw my menses. And that was the first time I had seen my menses. So I was like, eh, how now? How is that even possible? So for me, I ignored, despite the pains, despite the dizziness and how I was feeling, I never took it seriously. So I just went to the river, I cleaned myself up because at that particular time and age, nobody was allowed to see your blood because people will make fun of you. They will just mock you and regard you very dirty. So I just hid myself. I went to the river, I cleaned myself up, washed my clothes, waited for them to dry because people were busy with the funeral arrangements, so nobody bothered to know where is Sam and so. So when I went back home, I was still feeling weak, some abdominal pains. I just couldn't understand myself, but it never occurred to me like it's something that could call for an alarm. After a few days, I went back to school and I asked my teacher, hey, I saw my menses, but now it never came back. What could be the problem? Then my teacher told me there's no need for alarm because hormones differ. You might have maybe regular periods or irregular periods. You will have to give it a few months for you to check whether it's a regular or irregular because hormones are different with different people. So you'll just have to relax. So for me, I never took it serious. I just relaxed and I felt okay. So weeks continued, months continued. Now, after 5 months, when I'm in school, I could just sleep. I don't know, I just feel dizzy. I just want to sleep all the time. And I had my aunt tell my grandmother, Caro is pregnant. So for me, I was like, how can I be pregnant? You see? And I remember I went for 2 weeks without talking to them. I asked them, how can I be pregnant yet I have not known any man? Kwani ilikuja kwa maji? So they were like, no, Caro, you're pregnant. You have to go for a test to confirm. So I went to the hospital and it was confirmed I was pregnant. Oh my God. I didn't know what to do, what to say. I was like, pregnant? How? Is it even possible? So now I had this brother of mine. The one I found myself in his chambers. We were too close. Like we could share practically everything. So I went to him and told him, hey, I've gone to the hospital and it has been confirmed I'm pregnant. But now I'm wondering, how did it happen? Where did the pregnancy come from? So my brother told me, hey, Caro, you want to tell me you didn't have a nice time? And I was like, what do you mean by nice time? And he told me, my friend who bought us sodas, you want to tell me you didn't have a perfect time with him? And I asked him, what do you mean by that? And he said, he paid me some money for him to have time with you. And I was like, how is that even possible? And he said, who refuses money? Actually free of charge. So for me, I took the money, I gave him the house, and allowed him to enjoy himself with you. So from there, I was so much shocked. I was sad, I cried, and even told him, whatever you have done to me to ruin my life, you'll never have peace, and your life will also be ruined the same way you have ruined my life. Because this is someone I don't know, I've never met him. This is the first time he came, but because of the greed you had for money, you had to destroy my life.
Caroline felt betrayed, rejected, and unloved. How did she manage to pick up the pieces? Her story continues after the break. This week on Crosstalk.
The more controversial someone is, the more handsome or beautiful they look like in the eyes of the politics.
The question is, what price are you willing to pay for what you stand for?
So, the level of integrity in this country, is it indicative of the level of integrity within the smallest unit in our society?
That's this Sunday at 8 p.m. We have all experienced periodic changes in one way or another while establishing and maintaining love and unity within our families.
So my dad really gave me a beating that day, just for me to say who was responsible for the pregnancy. I cried, but now even crying couldn't help. My family told me, Carol, you have disappointed us. You are no longer part of us because you claim like you are going to church, you are a church girl, but here you are doing things that church girls don't do. So for me, life had to make a turn. I felt like nobody wanted me. I even tried to abort the child, but it didn't happen. And I just said, God, I'm really sorry. Like, I wanted to commit murder, but now, just forgive me and just make my baby to be healthy. Just disconnect this child with any evil things, any evil blood, any spirits. Just disconnect this child. Just make this child to be just the perfect child.
After her bundle of joy arrived, the blessing was not received with jubilation.
I didn't have clothes for the child. I didn't have napkins, laces. I had practically nothing. So the only thing I could do, I could just take my clothes, wrap the baby inside, just to get the warmth, and we sleep. So it went that way at least for the first 3 months. Then I got a contract to make roads, like we were cleaning roads, so I got the job. When I got paid, actually I remember it was 3,000. So that's when I went and did the shopping for the child. After 6 months, my aunt told me, Carol, you are now a mother and you have to cater for the needs of your child. For you to do so, you have to work. So there is someone in Nairobi who has requested you to go and work. And for me, I asked her, how can I work when I have a little child? She's barely 6 months. And she told me, don't worry about that. You will go with your child because it has been allowed.
Excited about the fortunes that were coming, Caroline took up the challenge to start a new job in Nairobi.
Money was sent, bus fare. Very early in the morning the following day, I woke up at 4 in the morning from all the way from Western to Nairobi just to get that, to secure that employment. So a mobile number was written on a piece of paper and I was told when I arrive in Nairobi, I should borrow a mobile phone and call that number because I didn't have a cell phone. When I arrived in Nairobi, I borrowed a cell phone. I called the number. The person told me, just be still where you are. I will be coming. So after a few hours, there came this guy. He was asking around, are you Carol? Are you Carol? And I said, yes, I am. And he said, okay, I'm here for you. Let's go. So we went until to a certain house. And when we reached there, the first night we slept comfortably. But now the second day, the man went and locked us in the house. When he came back in the evening, he told me, Carol, do you know why you are here? And I said, yes, I'm here because I've come to work. And he asked me, do you know which kind of job you have come for? And I said, no, I'm not aware. And he said, okay, You are here, and the kind of work you are going to do is to be my wife. So I was like, how can I be your wife? You don't know me, I don't know you. We have never met, this is the first time we are meeting. How can I be your wife?
Barely 6 months into motherhood and the wounds from the rape ordeal still fresh in her mind, Caroline found herself in yet another predicament.
I didn't have any other option. I couldn't go back home because first my parents said I've disappointed them and I'm no longer considered their child. The church at home feels disappointed and embarrassed by me. Nobody has given me a chance to explain what has happened and how did I become pregnant, how comes, what really happened. Nobody has given me that chance. I had to accept. I stayed with this man, but the only problem was giving yourself to someone that you are not emotionally connected to. It's really difficult. So most of the time we could engage in fights because of sex. Like the man wants sex, I'm not ready for it. And we could fight. And it went to an extreme until one day he just woke up and said, if you don't want to give me sex, what are you doing? And he took out the belt and started beating me up. And for me, I got so much frustrated. I even just grabbed a knife and said, if this tail is going to make you beat me almost every night, then it's better if I chop it off. So unfortunately, he overpowered me then. So things continued until one night, it became too much. Like the man hit me on the head until I passed out. So I bled for some time. When I gained consciousness, I woke up. And the first thing I thought was just to move out of that house. I went, and the first place I thought of was just to my pastor's house. When I went there, he took me to the hospital. When we went to the hospital, the doctor said, we have to call the police and find out what happened. But the doctor was told I fell from the bathroom. So that case, there was no way I could report because the doctor has been told I fell in the bathroom, though he was not convinced because he was like, if she fell from in the bathroom, how comes it's a deep wound? How did it even happen? But they told the doctor, don't even bother about so many questions, just treat her and allow us to go.
Delivered from the jaws of death, Caroline had had enough and left the home physically and emotionally broken.
Despite all the church efforts for me to forgive the man, I couldn't find it in my heart to forgive him because the pains had gone deeper. So the church told me, Carol, since you have refused to forgive the man, then you are not supposed to come to church. So I stayed out of the church for 1 whole year without going to church. I was just on my own. I have no one to turn to. I have nobody to talk to. It's only me. And within that 1 year, I tried looking for a job, but I didn't find any. Then I came and landed a job in bar and restaurant. I used to clean sheets in a lodging and wash latrines. And I was told now that you have gone to do such kind of a work, you are now a prostitute.
Shattered and traumatized by her own kin, Caroline was left with severe anxiety and emotional scars.
I didn't want to be closer to any man, not even sit next to any man in a vehicle or just any man talking to me. I felt like all men were just violent, they were abusive, they were dirty. Like I really hated men in general. And I told myself, I don't want anything to do with men. And I took life in a very simple way. And I just said, if I have managed to come all this far, what is there difficult that I cannot manage at this particular time?
Starting all over again was not a walk in the park for Caroline, but she found comfort in her peers.
One time in a WhatsApp group, I was in a certain WhatsApp group, and in that WhatsApp group, we always share topics for discussion. So one day, there was a topic of discussion, and I made a very bitter comment about men. And the admin inboxed me and asked, "Hey, Carol, what is really happening? Are you okay?" And I just gave out a very long paragraph on the reasons why I really hate men. And he told me, "Okay, don't worry, I understand, just stay calm. And are you really willing to talk someone of your gender?" And I said, "It's okay." Then a lady was referred to me, and she inboxed me. She was so friendly, we talked, and I felt I can anger out my anger towards her. And she was so much understanding, and she told me, "It's okay, whatever you're feeling, it's allowed." We have a GBV seminar, GBV, gender-based violence seminar, creating awareness for people outside there to express what they feel. So the only thing I want you to do, I'm just inviting you, come join us, listen to other people's stories. You don't have to say anything, just listen. So after they had all shared their stories, I was called to introduce myself. I stood up, and the first time when I introduced myself, I cried. Like, I don't even know where the tears came from, but I cried.
It was so moving what she had gone through from the hands of her own grandfather, what she had gone through, I think, another young man who I think was a friend to his brother, then later on thinking she was coming to work as a house girl. She ends up in the hands of a man. She was very messed up. Her heart was wounded. She needed a shoulder to cry on. So I remember the moment she was sharing and she could not continue. At that point, I was so moved. I just went and hugged her just to remind her that everything will be okay.
I cried for over 2 minutes. And just having that hug, like it had been so long since I got hugged. Even my mom had never hugged me since I was a little child. And getting that hug from Diana Kamande, for her it might have been just a simple hug. But for me it was something very special. I felt I'm loved, like there's someone who really cares. He even arranged for counseling services at Nairobi Women's Hospital. And I went for those sessions for 2 good years without paying even a single cent. All because of Diana.
Carol is able to socialize very well, and Carol nowadays she's able to tell her story without tears. Yes, at some point it can become emotional because it's her own journey, but most of the time, Carol can tell her story without shedding a tear.
Despite her painful past, Caroline counts it all joy, knowing that her situation did not catch God by surprise, as in Proverbs 23.
It made me stronger because whenever I find a situation or somebody in a similar situation, I am at a better position to advise that person, to tell that person, if you see this sign, this is what you're supposed to do. Don't wait for things to get worse, because you might be there waiting for things to get better when in real sense you are dying.
We hope Caroline's story has inspired you. If you have a story you would like to share with us, kindly text us on 20316 or WhatsApp us on 0786 316 316 or email us on thisismystory@familymedia.tv and we will get back to you. Fresh, insightful, and in-depth stories from current affairs, opinion, inspiration, lifestyle, church-related articles, and so much more on www.familynews.today. Insights at your fingertips.